Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Sierra, and please remember, if you do not like what I say, how I say it, or why I say it, then please do feel free to click off this video and go about the rest of your day in peace. And so I am back again with a fun little quick video. Hopefully this will be a quick video. But I decided that it'd be fun to kind of go through and show you guys all of the decks that I own as of the end of 2020. So this video is going to have two sections. The first section, I'll be going through all of the tarot, and this is specifically any deck that I have that is labeled as a tarot. I'll go through all of those really quick. I'll talk a little bit more about certain ones. Same with the Oracle decks, just to say, you know, what my experience has been with them, what I think about them. But again, there will not be any full-blown tour, like in-depth tours of any of these. But if you guys are interested in seeing a tour of a particular deck that I show here, please do leave a comment so that I know. And if I haven't already done a tour of that video of that particular tarot or that oracle, I will of course do that. And if I have already done it, I'll link it to whoever comments that. So yes, there's going to be that section. There's going to be timestamps in the description box, basically a timestamp for just the tarots and then a timestamp for the oracle cards. The oracle card section is definitely going to be much longer. But with that said, I thought this would be a good video to do so that you guys could see what my collection is like. And of course, for those of you who maybe comment sometimes, you know, oh, what decks are you using? Generally, if it's a comment that's just asking, oh, what decks are you using in this video, I generally cannot reply back to that sort of comment, just because even in just one pick a card, I will be using lots of different decks. So if you are going to comment something like that and you want to know what decks, I would highly recommend, because generally the ones I do respond back to are like when somebody says, oh, I picked pile 3 and what is this card, you know, let's say it's a sun card or something, you know, what is that sun card from in pile 3? What deck is that from? That is a lot easier for me to point you in the right direction to what deck I'm using. If not, again, if anybody in the future is commenting, oh, what decks are you using? I'm probably going to link them to this video here, just because this is going to be my full collection. Again, as of 2020, I'll most likely do an updated version of this kind of tour. Maybe at the end of this year, we shall see. Just depends on what you guys think of this one. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and start jumping into this. We're going to start off with all the tarots that I own. So fun fact, I do not actually own a tarot deck that is based off the, well, that is the traditional Rider-Waite imagery, or the Thoth Tarot for that matter. Thoth Tarot is like the more advanced version of the Rider-Waite. So that's kind of a fun fact, but it would not be a good tour of the tarots that I own if I don't start off with the first tarot that I ever owned, and I got this when I was very young, and that is the Shapeshifter Tarot. Let me go ahead. So this is the Shapeshifter Tarot here, and so this tarot in particular is the first tarot that I ever got. And it is definitely not a traditional tarot. There's actually additional cards in this. They kind of changed what some of the suits are called and the elements related to those suits than what is traditionally associated with the normal Rider-Waite tarot. But it's a really, really great deck. Unfortunately, I think that this particular deck is no longer in print. So if you are going to look for your own copy of this, you're definitely going to have to search around a bit. But that is the Shapeshifter Tarot. That is my first one that I ever got. And so next up, we're going to go ahead and jump into some of the other ones. The next two decks, because again, I got that when I was pretty young. When I started getting back into, like, really heavily into tarot, and, you know, not too soon after starting my channel, or at least doing the tarot videos on my channel, the next decks that I got that I was really drawn to were the Mystical Manga Tarot and, of course, the Shadowscapes Tarot. Reason I got both of these decks is actually I've been longtime fans of both of these artists, especially Stephanie Law. I've been looking at her art for ever now, and I was actually following this artist, Ran, on DeviantArt, and I saw her making these cards. So I was really excited when I went into a metaphysical shop. I saw both of these, and eventually I got my own copies of them. So again, these are both also, I would say, if you're not looking to get the Rider-Waite tarot, the traditional tarot in that sense, and the imagery, these are two really good decks for beginners because they are pretty chill, pretty basic. So next up, I have the Mermaid Tarot here, one of a couple Mermaid Tarots I have, and the Dark Woods Tarot as well. This one has a very good guidebook with it, so also another great one for anybody who is just wanting to start off with the tarot and you don't want that traditional imagery, you want something a little bit more unique and you love mermaids. Definitely would recommend this because it has a very good guidebook attached to it. The Dark Woods Tarot I would definitely recommend for anybody who wants a tarot deck that has a little bit of a darker theme and energy about it, especially if you're wanting to do maybe more shadow work or just, again, you're more of the gothic type. This would definitely be a great deck to have in your collection. So moving right along here, speaking of gothic kind of tarots, we have the Tarot of the Vampires. And I also have the Tarot of the Divine right here. So both of these really interesting decks. This one I particularly like a lot. Has a very in-depth booklet as well. And what I really think is really cool about these cards is that each card has specific planetary and zodiac signs associated with it. So again, if you're looking to really incorporate that more into a reading, this is a really great deck for that. But again, the guidebook itself, if you're going to go based off the guidebooks, very long, detailed guidebooks. For the Tarot of the Divine, this is a really cool deck, especially, again, if you want to incorporate more cultural things into your reading, maybe specific countries, this is a great deck for that because, again, each card is specifically based around a different kind of fairy tale or mythology or folklore from all across the world, so you can really incorporate that whole concept into a reading with this deck. And also the artwork is very cute. So moving right along, the next deck I have here is a really special one because this is one actually I got via Kickstarter, but I do believe that the creator of this deck is also selling them through her website as well. And this is the Botan Tarot here. Really beautiful artwork. It is all traditional artwork. It's very much heavily based around Japanese mythology, stories, culture. It's really a fantastic deck. And in this case, I will pull this one out. It does come with a nice little basic booklet here. And I'm not sure, again, if through her website, if you get the option, but through her Kickstarter, you had the option between the gold edge gilded deck or a blue indigo edge deck. So that was pretty cool. Really love this little deck. And of course I do because the artwork is all watercolor based, which is one of my favorite mediums. So that is this very cool deck. Next up, I have the Golden Wheel, Tarot of the Golden Wheel. Also have the Good Tarot as well. And we have the Animal Tarot. So with these particular tarots, so this is actually a tarot that I've used a lot for career readings. Interesting enough, I don't know why I always kind of gravitate towards that one, but I have a lot of times for this particular one. The Good Tarot, I actually haven't used this particular tarot too much. Definitely does not have like the traditional imagery of the Rider-Waite, so I feel like this one could be a little bit of a trickier one to read. This particular tarot, I do not even treat as a tarot. I do not read it like a tarot. I use this more as a oracle deck than anything. And then I will say that there are particular cards in this deck that trigger me because there's definitely incorrect labeling of the animal to the image, especially one particular cat image. I believe it's labeled as an Abyssinian cat, and it's definitely, the image is not an Abyssinian cat. So I have a couple issues with this particular deck, so I don't use it all that often, but I have it. Next up, I have the Akashic Tarot, which is a rather newer deck that I've purchased, so I haven't really used this much. I can't really speak much on how I vibe with it yet, but I definitely feel like this is probably a deck I'd more so use as an oracle deck than a traditional tarot. I also have the Light Seers Tarot here, which I have used this quite a bit. It's a good, diverse kind of deck. Nice vibe. Again, it's a really just kind of good, solid tarot to use. And again, if you want something with a little more diversity in it, this is definitely a good one to gravitate towards. Another deck that I have here is the Psychic Tarot. And again, this is another tarot that I do not really treat like a tarot. I treat this more as an oracle deck because, well, even though it is the Psychic Tarot, it is labeled as an oracle deck. The cards are based around the tarot, the traditional tarot, but there are a lot of additional cards in here, so that's kind of why they have it labeled the way it is. It's the Psychic Tarot, but it's also an oracle deck, so it's kind of this weird middle ground between the two, but it's a really fun deck to use, again, especially as just an oracle deck. So, next up, I also have the Dreams of Gaia Tarot here, and I have another manga tarot here. This is the traditional manga tarot. This is another deck that is more new to my collection, so I haven't used it too much. This one is actually the pocket edition of the main deck, obviously, that is called the Dreams of Gaia Tarot. The larger version has a really big booklet with it, really goes in depth with everything, but I really like this little pocket edition because it's tiny, it's easy to use, and the meanings are a lot more condensed and shorter. But this is also one that is labeled as a tarot, but I do not treat it as a tarot. I use this more as an oracle deck. Also, I absolutely love the artwork for this deck. So the next tarot here, I'm actually going to pull this one out a little bit, is one I got off Etsy. And this is the movie tarot, I believe is what it's called. And so, as the name implies, each card is based around a different kind of movie. So again, if you want to use this, I don't know, this is just kind of a fun deck to use for very specific kinds of readings. Of course, you could use it as a normal one, but it's kind of a nice one to kind of, if you're familiar with that movie and what the story is, you can kind of incorporate that into the reading and whatever the message is. So that is the movie tarot. Again, you can find that on Etsy. Next up, we have the Crystal Tarot. We have the Ghost Spirits Tarot, and we have the Sex Fortunes Sex Position Tarot cards for lovers. So, this is a fairly more recent addition to my collection. Again, very kind of Art Deco-y, Art Nouveau based kind of imagery. It's really cool. I like the imagery. Again, solid, kind of just basic tarot here. The Ghosts and Spirits Tarot. This is a really fun one because each card has a specific sort of spirit or ghost or kind of like supernatural creature that is associated with that card. So again, you could really go a lot deeper with this particular deck if you were interested in, again, folklore, mythology. You can go ahead and explore that more with the different kind of creatures that are, you know, depicted in each card. So that's really fantastic. And then of course, we have this particular deck. You can find this easily on Amazon. Again, if you want to get a little bit more spicy with love reading, this is a card to use. My opinion of this particular deck is that, and the images are not really that great. And again, it kind of just does what it does. The quality of the deck itself is not the greatest either. So it's just kind of a more, you know, I guess for the funsy kind of deck if you're interested in it, but you know, it's not necessarily my favorite out of the erotic decks that I own. So, have some real interesting decks here. So, have the True Black Tarot, we have the Children of Letha Tarot, and we have Ember and Aura Tarot. So, True Black, really unique deck here. The images are really, again, really cool. So I will actually pull this one out just a little bit. Again, you have a lot of images like this. This is a bit of a pricier deck for sure. Again, the edges are all this wonderful kind of matte black. The cards are really like silky and velvety feeling. They are very stiff, the cardstock, which again, if you're somebody who really likes that, the only thing is it can make them a little bit difficult to shuffle. But again, this is a really interesting, unique deck, and the major arcanas have some really interesting additional meanings attached to it. Children of Letha, again, beautiful artwork. I absolutely fell in love with it. Really diverse deck as well. Each suit is kind of associated with different parts of the world, so you get a really nice cultural mix with this particular deck. So if you're looking for something like that, I would definitely highly recommend this one. Ember and Aura, this is a really beautiful deck. It's really soft, it's very feminine, really fantastic if you really want to work with that feminine energy. I would highly recommend this deck as well. You can also find this deck, I think it's I definitely know you can find it on Instagram. I believe there is a official website as well. I'm not sure if this is also available through Etsy or not. I cannot remember. But moving right along. You're going to hear me say that quite a few times in this video. But next up we have the Druid Craft Tarot deck. And we have the Muse Tarot. So this one definitely pay more attention than I did, because my Pisces twin, she had this deck, and she had this really like large, like the deck itself is this size, but there is a larger version that you can kind of purchase that comes with a really big booklet that goes really in depth with the cards. So I was really excited by that deck. I was really interested in the booklet. So I went to purchase it and made the mistake of not paying attention to that this was the kind of more, in a sense, pocket edition. So the booklet doesn't have the extensive meanings. It's still really solid. It's still a really good deck. And this is actually one of the few tarot decks that I own where I will read the reversals that are associated with this deck, just because it does such a fantastic job. With the Muse Tarot, I have not used this particular tarot too much in my videos or worked with it too much. Definitely stronger on the feminine energy with this particular deck. So if you're interested in working with that, focusing on that, this is definitely a great deck for this. The artwork is really interesting, very surreal-y. So yeah. So next up we have, hopefully I can pronounce this one right, Nicoletta Sicoli Tarot. We also have the Botticelli Tarot that is gilded. We also have the Erotic Fantasy Tarot. So obviously Botticelli Tarot, you know, I went to art school. I mean, I am an artist. If you follow me on all my other social medias, my Patreon, all that good stuff. And of course did plenty of art history courses and such. So of course whenever I see a particular tarot deck that is based around, you know, particular historical artists, I'm going to try to hop on that. So of course with Botticelli, I've actually seen Botticelli up close artwork via my school. That was really cool. And so I of course had to get this particular deck. Again, it's a solid, cool little deck. Interesting to see the artwork put onto a tarot deck. So yes, I would recommend that for any of the art history nerds out there. Definitely go for this. This particular deck, I really love the imagery, but my biggest issue with this deck is that it can be really kind of tricky to read, especially when it comes to the minor suits, the court cards in particular. A lot of times I have to kind of go through and remind myself which is which, what's the queen, what's the kings, just because it's like if you have them up together next to each other, you can tell which one is which, but if you're kind of just shuffling, it falls out. There's no really clear indications through the artwork itself, like, oh yeah, that's a king or that's a queen. It's very muddled in that sense, so just sometimes I have a hard time reading this one. The Erotic Fantasy Tarot. Of course, I got this because, well, it has the word erotic in it. So I'm all about collecting the erotic tarots because I think they're really interesting and they're different. But I was highly disappointed with this particular tarot just because of that label of erotic. I do not find this deck very erotic. There's only about like 2 or 3 cards that, yeah, like I guess you could call that an erotic image. But for the most part, it is not very erotic at all. It's not really that diverse either in the imagery, but it's still a very beautiful deck. The artwork is nice. I think the style is interesting, but again, if you're gonna go for this and you're expecting something diverse or something very erotic, it's like you're not gonna really find it with this particular deck. So, moving right along, got the Fairy Lights Tarot. Also have another Tarot of the Mermaids, and we have the Rio Dark Tarot. So, Fairy Lights Tarot, really, really interesting artwork. And I'm going to just open this up to remind myself of which one, because I actually have 2 decks that is done by the same artist, and the other deck is really quite different from this one. So this one is the one that I generally gravitate towards more than the other one that I have, just because, as I pull out the cards yet again, you know, pretty easy to read, you know, clear reversible back, really beautifully interesting painted images, and so really enjoy that, especially if you like something mystical and fantasy. That is a good one to grab for. Tarot of the Mermaids, I really like this one as well. Again, really easy to read. The suits on this, the imagery is painted very nicely. Again, if you like mermaids, I would go for it. Rio Dark Tarot, again, really great artwork. There is one particular, is the 2 of Cups in this deck. If you look it up or you get this deck and you see it, you'll know what I mean. That one is a very spicy card, and I quite like it. But yes, again, all of these, I will gravitate towards these and use them for different times for different readings. But again, all of them solid imagery. Very nice. If you're gravitating toward them, I would recommend getting them. No complaints. Next up, we have the Arcana Tarot, another manga tarot, and we have the Pre-Raphaelite tarot. So again, this is another one for the art nerds out there. I really, really like this deck. I've used it quite a few times. The images are really striking to me, and I just have a lot of fun reading the images, more so than just, oh, you know, it's the 2 of Cups. Just read it like the 2 of Cups. I get a lot off the imagery with this particular deck. Manga Tarot, again, another beautiful one, especially if you like, again, this style of artwork. I recommend going for it. The only thing to keep in mind with this particular tarot is that all of the traditional cards that are masculine, feminine, so, you know, the kings, the queens, the empress, the emperor, are all switched in this deck. So what typically would be the emperor is now the empress, in a sense. Like, it's still, the meaning is still the emperor, but it's depicted in the feminine instead of the masculine. Same with the kings and the queens. So what would traditionally be a king is actually the queen. They just made the feminine, you know, the higher energy here with this particular deck. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Again, lovely mix of images. There's a lot more male figures, I feel like, in this particular deck in comparison to certain other decks. So that's nice as well. The Arcana Tarot, again, if you go here on my channel, you will find my unboxing and tour of this. This is based off the app game, if you're familiar with it. Really fun to play. Definitely check it out. You might get sucked into the story, but they made their own tarot deck, which of course I got. It is, I've used it a couple different times on my channel. It is really simple. It's not very complicated. Again, the minor arcanas are pips, pretty much. Everything has some form of gilding on it, some more than others. The major arcanas have specific figures that you would recognize kind of from the game itself. So, again, it is a pricier deck. It does not come with a booklet at all. I've answered that question a couple different times because some people had concern over that. But yeah, there is no booklet. But if you're familiar with the meanings of the traditional tarot and the Rider-Waite, then you will have no problem reading this deck. You don't need a booklet for this deck. The only issue maybe for some people, for some collectors, would be the fact that there's pips instead of, the full drawn out image for each thing. And they're a little bit of a more unique pip. Like all the pentacles are like rats, swords are all dragons. So you get a little bit of interest, a little bit of difference, but they're still technically pips. So next up we have the Tarot of Sexual Magic. For anybody who here on YouTube has watched a lot of love readings or a lot of sexy readings, you're probably very familiar with this deck already. We also have the Native American Tarot. This is a more recent purchase of mine, so I haven't used it too much on my channel, but I really love the images in this particular deck. Really interesting. And we have the Bosch Tarot. Again, another fantastic artwork based tarot. I definitely had to go for this because Bosch is just a wild, crazy artist. If you're not familiar with his work, go Google it and go take a look at it because it is gnarly. Again, I had to get this one because I just fell in love with the images and the style of the artwork. Very much watercolor kind of based imagery, it looks like. Same with actually the Tarot Sexual Magic. That it was a big thing that attracted me to this, was also the artwork. I do really like how it's painted and how it's done. I like that if you're looking very closely at the cards, you can actually see some of the, the bones and the sketching for the artwork itself. So that's kind of nice to see that little peek of like the process of it. My biggest complaint, and I've used this deck quite a lot now at this point, is that obviously for a sexual tarot, it is really not diverse. It does not have a diverse range of figures in it, if you catch my drift. There's really not a lot of change in the cultural depictions in this particular deck. It's very basic in that way, but again, it's still a beautiful deck. It's still one of the best ones to kind of use, unfortunately, for the sexual tarot, because again, it's solid for that, minus the fact that the images themselves are not very diverse. And again, there's a nice range. There is a kind of a nice range of a little bit of different things. I think there could be more added to it. I think it can go even further with certain depictions of things, but generally, this is definitely actually erotic, unlike, again, my complaint about one of the previous ones. So next up, we have Tarot of the Cat People. We also have the Casanova Tarot, and we have the Tarot Erotica. So two of these are kind of rarer decks to find. Oops, one of them is trying to jump forward. So Tarot Erotica, this is an out of print deck. So again, if you're going to find this, if you manage to find it in a shop or you manage to find it online, I found this one through eBay. Expect to be paying, anywhere from like $60 to, $78, something along those lines. Like, it's going to be fairly more expensive because, again, it is an out of print deck, but it is well worth it because the artwork is really, really interesting, especially for an erotic tarot. It has very much callback in the imagery to the Thoth Tarot. That you could definitely tell that they were more inspired by the artwork of the Thoth Tarot for this. Also, I would give it big props for being way more diverse than other erotic tarots out there, because at least you have, some cards that are depicting, different sexual orientations, unlike a lot of other decks that don't necessarily show that. So really, really interesting. I mean, you got full-on orgies and stuff in this particular deck. So really, really interesting artwork. Really tells quite the story. Casanova Tarot, also an erotic tarot. Again, it's following the life of Casanova. And so that is the imagery that you're getting with it. You have a lot of very big-boobed female figures. Just gonna call it out right now. But again, if you're like me and you like collecting the erotic tarots, you might as well have it in your collection. It's not bad. And then we have the Tarot of the Cat People. Again, this is another one that is kind of a harder one to find. Really, really unique and interesting artwork. Has really a cool vibe about it. I haven't used it too much on my channel yet, because again, fairly more new to my collection. But if you want something with really unique artwork and that tells a really unique story, because there literally is story behind how this is like a whole built fantasy world that takes a lot from all these different kind of cultures, is really neat. So next up, we have the Tarot of the Haunted House. We also have the Kama Sutra Tarot, of course. And we have Tarot of the Secret Forest. So this is that other deck that is done by the same artist. And which that is the artist's name right there. This is the one that I tend to, not grab as often, just because it can be a little bit trickier to read. Again, kind of with the court cards. But the other really interesting thing about this particular deck is that obviously you have this painted image. You flip it over, it's actually a reversible tarot. So there's actually no backs to these particular tarots. What you get on the back is actually kind of the underpainting or the sketch that, the artist did for the main painting. So that's really a big thing, that reason I gravitated toward this deck, because I thought that concept was really cool. So obviously we have the Kama Sutra Tarot, because obviously, as I've already stated, I collect the erotic tarots in particular. So of course I had to get this one. It's an alright one. Again, I don't really gravitate towards it. I don't really use it that often. Again, if I do use it, I'm not necessarily using it as a tarot. I'm using it more for the purposes of, like, in a sexy reading, like, oh, positions. There you go. And then we have the Tarot of the Haunted House. This is a really cool one. It kind of tells a story, because it has the same figure kind of reappearing throughout the whole entire deck. And it's just like the artwork is really nice. Again, if you kind of like that classic haunted house, kind of like movie-esque style thing, this is definitely a cool one to have in your collection. So we have, let's see, this is the, how do you even want to say this one? I'm trying to count. Let's see, the 13th tarot, if I have my Roman numerals correct. So really, really interesting artwork, especially for the major arcanas. Where this particular deck kind of falls a little bit more flat for me is when it comes to the minors. Obviously, it is very basic pip style. So again, all the daggers, I think is what it is in this one, are all just literally daggers. Like, there's nothing else imagery, interesting about it. But the major arcanas are really, really beautifully detailed. Again, if you like something a little bit more gothic, steampunky, kind of mixed, just darker themed kind of tarot, this is definitely one to have in your collection. This one here is the, how do I say this one correctly? Decameron Tarot. I can never say this one correctly, but again, it is for adults only. It is another erotic tarot, and this is next to the Tarot of Sexual Magic. This is probably the second one that I've gravitated towards the most. The images are really weird, okay? They're really fucking weird. There's some weird ones in here, but it really does drive home the adult content label on this particular deck. When it says that, it really means it. Because every card is very adult. So again, very weird, some of the images, kind of like, but it's a really kind of fun one to have in your collection. Again, if you like to collect those kind of tarots. So next up, I'm going to jump into the mini tarots that I have. So, and I have a couple. So I have the mini Everyday Witch Tarot. And so this one, obviously, if you're familiar with the Everyday Witch Tarot, they have the larger version. All of these, you could probably find a larger version of it. my biggest complaint with this mini one is that it does not come with a booklet at all. So again, the large traditional version of this tarot has a really nice booklet with it. So that's a little bit disappointing, but again, you don't really need it if you know your traditional meanings. And again, this is based off the traditional Rider-Waite tarot. We have the Primavera tarot, which again, or the Tarot Art Nouveau, which is again, really lovely little art-related tarot to have. There's a lot of different Art Nouveau tarots out there. I like this little tiny mini one to add to my collection. And it does come with a small booklet. Very, very basic. Very cute. Also have the Klimt Tarot. Pocket Golden Edition. So again, all of this is gilded. Every card is. And it features, again, Klimt's artwork. So it's really beautiful. Again, I got it because of it's Klimt. Why not? So, another one of my favorite little erotic tarots that I have is this Manara tarot. Again, very much the artwork is based around like old Hollywood. My biggest plus with this one, again, there's some weird images in here for sure. It definitely does, you know, mean when it says it's an adult deck. It is. And what's nice about this deck is that pretty much all the cards have a specific zodiac sign and planet associated with it. So again, if you want to read this deck and you really want to incorporate that into a reading, this is a great little deck to do that, especially if you're doing like a sexual reading. You want to talk about maybe the person's possible natal chart information. This is a great deck to do that because it definitely references that. And my ultimate favorite out of the mini decks that I own, and the first one I ever got, is the Pagan Tarot. So basically, I saw this on Amazon, and something about the images just struck me. I loved it. I had to get it. There is actually a large version of this deck now with a full booklet, which I will probably eventually get at some point because I'm very curious about the booklet with this. This is a very modern kind of deck. It's like, it feels retro, but it's also very modern. It tells a modern, like, witch story. In fact, it does literally tell a story. Every, like, the major arcanas in particular literally map out the fool's journey with this main figure as, you know, the main character of the story. It's really, really great. I love it. I've used it a lot on my channel, especially for, like, when I was doing a lot of the weekly readings, I would use this deck. Lastly, we're about done with my tarot portion of this tour. And so the last part of it I'm going to talk about is specifically the 3 decks that I have that are tarot, but it's only the major arcanas of the tarot. So, first one, the second one, and the third one. So, this one right here, both of these are the reason I got them is because they were anime related. This one in particular is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Very much based off part 3, which is Stardust Crusaders, because everything in Stardust Crusaders is based around the tarot, minus the last final, like, what, 4 or 5 of these cards. But I had to get it because, again, it's the tarot. It's JoJo's. I love that series. This particular little major arcana deck is a special one that I got off Etsy. I believe that these are no longer, I'm not sure if they're going to print any more of this. This is from the artist Golden Tar, who I absolutely love. I've been following for a long time, and so when I saw that they made a major arcana deck, I had to get it. Obviously, I have edition 83 out of 100. And lastly, of course, another special edition major arcana deck here is the Sailor Moon Crystal Tarot cards. So again, it's just the major arcanas here. So these are, again, great to use if you're just looking for something where you just want to focus on those major arcana energies. I feel like it's kind of a good idea for anybody who is seriously doing a lot of tarot readings. Maybe you have a tarot channel, to have at least one deck where you just have the major arcanas to use for those sort of purposes. So that is all of the tarots in my collection. And so the final total for all this specifically labeled tarots, well, tarot and a half, because that one is called the Psychic Tarot, but it's also an oracle deck. But officially, I have 53 tarot in my collection. So the next portion of this is going to be me going through all of the oracle decks that I own, and I will also give the final total for all of those. And at the very end of this video, I'm going to be wrapping up the major total of all of the decks that I own. So let's go ahead and jump into that. All right, now we're going to go through all of my oracle decks, which I will try to get through these as quickly as I can, just because the tarot section of this video was a lot longer than I was expecting. So let's just jump into it. So I have Whispers of Healing oracle cards. I have the Goddess and Sirens oracle deck, as well as the Viking oracle and the Oracle of the Unicorns. Have the Halloween oracle, the Fairy Tale oracle. I have the Les Vampires oracle deck, as well as the Oracle of the Mermaids. Also have the Oracle of the Dragon Fae, and of course the Gods and Titans oracle deck. I also have the Sacred Rebels oracle deck, along with the White Light oracle, the Oracle of Shadows and Light, as well as the Oracle of the Shapeshifters, Myths and Mermaids, Oracle of the Water, the Wild Wisdom of the Fairy Oracle, the Magical Spell cards, as well as the Blessed Bee oracle deck. Also have the Dream Inspirational cards. These are really an interesting little deck there. Also have the Uncover Your Past Lives oracle. This is a more recent one to my collection. The Winged Enchantment oracle deck. Your Sacred Wealth Code oracle cards. The Messenger oracle. And the Oracle of the Radiant Sun. This is also my most recent new oracle deck. Got that during the Christmas season. Have the Archangel Animal oracle cards. The Animal Kin oracle cards, as well as the Spirit Animal oracle. Also the Crystal Stone deck. The True Love reading cards. And the Healing Yourself reading cards. Have the Numinous Astro deck. The Foxfire, the Kitsune oracle. And the Whispers of the Ocean oracle cards. Have the Witchlings book, or deck and book set. Also the Art Through the Eyes of the Soul oracle. And the Art Through the Star Stream oracle. Obviously both of these are done by the same artist. Really interesting paintings and stories behind all of that. Also have the Dream reading cards, the Karma cards, Spirit of the Animals oracle. Also have the Nature Speak oracle. This is honestly a deck that I really love to use with the tarot, because this one honestly kind of reacts like a tarot deck in a lot of ways, and a lot of times whatever the tarot is, whatever comes up in this deck usually reflect each other. It's really crazy. Love this little deck. Have the Witch's Kitchen Oracle cards, the Nature Whispers Oracle cards, the Witch's Wisdom Oracle cards, Whispers of Love, and the Witch's Familiars Oracle cards. Have a copy of the Romance Angel Oracle cards. So have Alice's Romance Oracle. She's also a tarot reader here on YouTube. Have my 7th Sphere edition of the Lenormand or Lenormand Nocturna Oracle, which I got this off Etsy, as well as this one, the Primrose in Prose Oracle deck, the Lover's Oracle. This is the Mediumship Training deck. Also, Spirit Cats. This was another one that you can find this one on Amazon, but I got mine from Etsy from the seller. And we have the Animal Messages. Have Yggdrasil, which is the Norse divination cards. Have the Tea Leaf Fortune cards. Have the Wild Unknown Animal Spirit, as well as the Mystical Shaman Oracle, and also have the Goddess Power Oracle. Next up, I'm going to be careful with these because they're kind of like loose, but have the Between the Sheets Oracle, the Erotica deck, the Divine Masculine Beast Unleashed, the Sensual Desires, as well as the Love and Lust deck as well. And all 5 of these are done by Fire Witch Tarot, which you can find on Instagram as well as Etsy, and of course here on YouTube as well. So I have all these decks, and obviously mainly use these for the sexy readings. All right, have the Queen of the Moon Oracle, have the Wisdom of the Hidden Realms, the Wisdom of Avalon, also have Runes Oracle cards, have Messages from Your Animal Spirit Guides Oracle cards, the Spirit Messages Daily Guidance and Oracle deck, have the Oracle of the 7 Energies, the Wisdom of the Oracle, and Messages from the Mermaids. I have quite a few of these very small ones. So we got the Sea Melodies. Also have the Whispering Woods. Have the Star Seeds. Have the Sweet Dreams. Fairy Dust. The Divine Doors. The Aboriginal Dreaming Totems, the Making Magic, and the Crystal Wisdom, which pretty much all of these you can find on Amazon. These 2 in particular you can also find on Etsy. Next up, have the Fairies Oracle, which I really like this deck because I really like this artist. He's the one who did the designs for the Fae and the Goblins in things like Labyrinth. I believe he also worked on like Dark Crystal, a lot of those kind of movies. He did a lot of the designs for the different fae and stuff in it. It's really, really unique art style. Love this. Also have the Fairy Wisdom Oracle. Have the Druid Plant Oracle, as well as the Druid Animal Oracle. Also have, we're still going, the Quantum Oracle, the Enchanted Map. We have the Oracle of the Fairies. Also have Sacred Destiny Oracle, Angels and Ancestors Oracle, Keepers of the Light Oracle, have the Angel Prayers Oracles, the Angel Answers Oracle cards, the Dragon Oracle cards, the Divine Feminine Oracle, have Seasons of the Witch Oracle, have the Energy Oracle cards, have the Sacred Self-Care Oracle, the Magic of You Oracle, the Divine Animals Oracle, Angelarium Oracle of the Emanations. Hopefully I said that right. We have the Native American Oracle cards, the Morning Calm Oracle, which this was actually a Kickstarter from a local artist in Richmond, Virginia. Also have the Starseed Oracle, Moonology Oracle cards, and the Dark Mirror Oracle card. Definitely Moonology. The artwork may not be like anything amazing, but this is a really great deck to have, I think, in anybody's collection. Really solid cards and readings you can get with these. The Dark Mirror is definitely for those who want to do shadow work. This is a very dark, deep deck, and I always pull this out whenever I'm doing anything that has to do with like deep healing or shadow work kind of messages. Definitely not a deck that everybody might gravitate towards. And getting to our last set here, we got the Spellcasting Oracle cards, the Work Your Light Oracle cards, the Earth Magic Oracle cards, the Crystal Spirits, the Archetype cards, and lastly, the Life Purpose Oracle cards. So, again, trying to go rapid fire through these ones just because there are so many. In fact, for all the Oracle decks that I own, I have 113 Oracle decks. So, wrapping up this video, the grand total combining my tarot with how many of the Oracle decks I have, I currently, as of, again, the end of 2020, have 166 decks. That is absolutely insane. I know there's people out there that definitely have more than that. I'm sure I will have more than that number because I really do enjoy collecting. You know, not only do I use this, you know, these tools within my work that I do, but also I just really like collecting them because there's always interesting artwork, different meanings to things. It's really cool to see how everybody creates their deck, really. For those who stick around to the end, you got a nice little blooper there. But how they create their decks, the different types of decks out there, I think it's just really fun. Which is why, again, you do not need at all to have this many decks to do decent readings, to start a channel if you want to start a channel, to just start reading in general on any social media. You do not need this many decks to start off, of course. Again, if you have one solid tarot deck that you use, like one solid all-around good Oracle deck, which again, some of those that I would recommend are things like the Oracle, the Energy Oracle deck that I showed, Moonology, things like, again, like the Wisdom of the Oracle, You know, those kind of decks have like a more wide berth and like general messages. Even the Crystal Spirit here has a nice mix of things. Again, if you want me to go more in depth with certain decks, do full tours, talk about them more, definitely do let me know. If you want me to even do like special like focused video kind of tours of specific decks, like, oh, what are the best decks you would recommend for career readings or love readings or whatever from my own collection, I can do, you know, more focused kind of discussion videos on that, only if you guys are interested in that. So definitely do comment down below if you've made it this far in this video and let me know. So without further ado, that is my full tour as of the end of 2020 of the decks that I own. I hope that you guys found this video interesting. It wasn't too rambly. But yeah, I will see you guys in the next one.